the comedy industry is in a terrible, terrible state. It has been completely ideologically captured. If you have no understanding of the creative arts, don't get into the creative arts. It's pretty simple. You're not qualified to do it.
You've just reminded me of something there talking about comedy, actually, because you very lovingly describe Edinburgh Fringe Festival in your latest book, and I can't help but feel that had it been published a bit later, you would have included the recent controversy surrounding Jerry Sadowitz. Now, he's a complete unknown entity to me. You're well more informed in regards to his acts, his persona, etc. I just want to get your thoughts on that now, in terms of what happened and what the ramifications of something like that are.
I mean, you mentioned that. It's very frustrating, isn't it? Because, of course, the book was finished a number of months ago, and lots of things keep happening. And I think,
but this would be true. I mean, you could be publishing this in 2050 maybe, and I think you'd still be like, oh shit, something big's just happened. Yeah,
exactly. So, but that's fine, because I think I've got enough examples in the book. There are so many.
It is very expansive. I will give you that.
Yeah. But I think with Jerry Sadowitz, so a lot of people don't know. I mean, I've seen Jerry Sadowitz many times over many years. His act hasn't changed. Well, I mean, he writes new material all the time, but what I mean is the fundamental, his persona hasn't changed. And what he does, he is the most offensive act in the world, I would imagine. He's certainly the most controversial comedian I've ever seen. And he's a magician. He's a big frizzy head, almost psychotic, monstrous Scottish character who, well, he is Scottish. And what he does is he performs these magic tricks on stage, but throughout he's screaming this bile about everyone, about minorities, about women and gays and black people and everyone you can think that you mustn't go for. Jewish people, he's Jewish himself, but it doesn't matter. He goes for them as well, everyone. And it is like a cathartic experience. It's an explosion of hate. It's a persona, but it's also this weird juxtaposition. He's one of the best magicians in the country, so you've got this weird sort of anger and rage, and he's doing these incredible sleight of hand tricks.
It's like a Nazi Paul Daniels.
Yeah, exactly. And he's unquotable, by the way. I mean, I can think of some of his lines now. If I quoted them now, I think you'd probably get deboosted. It's proper. But the thing is, at no point do you come away thinking, "Oh, I want to be like him. I want to have those views." It is hilarious, and it is precisely hilarious because that persona is. There's always going to be a moment in a Jerry Sadowitz show where you think that's just way too. I can't cope with that. That's too much.
Didn't he get his cock out though? Isn't that the issue?
He does that all the time. That all the time. No, that's part of his persona. He's psychotic. So I mean, one of the shows I saw that he did a few years ago was called Jerry Sadowitz, Comedian, Magician, Psychopath.
Right.
A psychopath would get his cock out just to piss you off, while he's pulling doves out of his sleeve. But this is the thing. You have to see it as a theatrical persona, a theatrical performance. The idea that he is going out there to say literally what he thinks is so comedy illiterate. I don't even know what. It's just illiterate. Full stop. Nudity at the Edinburgh Fringe is normal. Right? You see penises all the time, right? It's called the Fringe. You're going to get the more extreme shows, right? And there's warnings all over his flyers. No one goes to see Jerry Sadowitz not knowing what they're letting themselves in for. The show was called Not For Anyone. He did a promo video beforehand saying, "I'm going to be rude. I'm going to get my cock out. I'm going to do that." Like, it's all out there. You're not in any position to complain that you thought you were going to see, I don't know, a group of women knitting. It's very, very clear what's going on there. I mean, one show I saw him do in London, he came out with a sheet over his hand, like he's going to do a magical reveal of something. And he kept sort of preparing it and saying, right, I'm going to pull this off now. But he had to keep stopping himself because he just thought of, oh, the fucking gays. No, this is why I hate the gays. And then he went back to the trick and he was like, no, and what about the fucking women, bitches and all this? And then he went back to it. And I promise you, it took him over an hour before he pulled it off. And there was nothing there.
Brilliant.
But it was just this sort of insanity encapsulated in a comedic persona. And it is fantastic. And he is fantastically talented. And for the Pleasance is one of the big four venues at Edinburgh. And they not only cancelled the run, well, he only had 2 shows, but it's a massive venue and it was sold out, right? So that's a big loss. They cancelled one of those shows, half of his run, I suppose. And they issued a statement saying that his material did not align with their values. I thought their values was to provide venues for artists to do whatever they wanted, to make their own artistic decisions, but apparently not. And
well,
also,
because they actually, in the statement, sorry, Andrew, they actually referenced directly his opinions, didn't they? They didn't mention anything about the public nudity, so they're literally making a statement about what has been said as being unacceptable, which is very, very strange. Yeah,
I don't know what his opinions are. He wasn't telling opinions; he was telling jokes.
Yeah, it was not a lecture, was it?
If the Pleasance, who's meant to be one of the biggest comedy venues in the country, if the Pleasance don't know what a joke is, if the Pleasance don't know the difference between a joke and an opinion, they need to get out of that industry. Just stage lectures by politicians if that's all you can do. If you have no understanding of the creative arts, don't get into the creative arts. It's pretty simple. You're not qualified to do it. I mean, they actually even said that members of the audience felt unsafe. They even used the lexicon of critical social justice there. And what's really annoying about it is, where were the big comics? Like, a few people said that they supported Sadowitz and this shouldn't happen. One of the co-owners of the Assembly Rooms, which is another venue, came out and said the Pleasance should get stuffed. We don't do this sort of thing, which is great. That was really good of him to do that. But on the whole, some of those big names, they were deathly quiet. And that's you know, the comedy industry is in a terrible, terrible state. It has been completely ideologically captured. Some of the most innovative acts never get anywhere. It rewards blandness. It rewards mediocrity. It will give literally awards. There will be awards in Edinburgh that are given to people who are very second-rate comics, but they promote the right message. So the industry is pretty much done. Like, so if you are seriously an innovative, interesting, young, up-and-coming comic, the best way is to circumvent the industry and go online, frankly, at this stage, until things get fixed. It doesn't mean anything. An award at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival no longer means you've got the best show. It means you've got the show that is ideologically in line with what the industry wants, and that's boring. And I suppose that I know that's been the case in the Oscars for a long time as well, but it's more palpable now and it's more intense. At least up until a few years ago, you would get some. And look, there are some talented people being nominated and everything. I'm not denying that. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of dross in there too. I've even seen, and particularly because comedy critics are very much ideologically captured, most of them. So you'll even see, I remember there's one particularly, he's not really a comedy critic, he's a propagandist for the identitarian left, but he thinks he's a critic. And he writes for The Guardian, and he wrote a piece about one of these very identitarian comics. And he almost admitted, well, no one was laughing, it wasn't funny, but a really good show, 4 stars, because he can't bring himself. It's like it's like the way they go when they try and review the new Morrissey album, and there was even one for The Independent where it sort of basically acknowledged he's really good, but 2 stars because his opinions are awful. These aren't critics; they're propagandists. Agreed.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of comedians are scared of losing or not getting offered that panel show gig and playing it very safe, unfortunately. Because we rely on comedians usually to, I hate to use this hacky term, but speak truth to power in a way. And it does feel like this ideology is the power at the moment.
Right, exactly. So that's what we should be satirising. That's what we should be mocking. But you get punished for doing so. But look, there's consolation here, I think, for young up-and-coming comics. I don't think that's the future. I don't, Mock the Week's going. Partly it's going because because it's become too politically bland and everyone's saying the same stuff and no one's interested in watching it. Same will happen to Live at the Apollo because no one's really watching that anymore. The industry will shrivel and die. And actually there's so many opportunities online to do your own thing and you can be so much more subversive and interesting. And yes, obviously comedians are worried about money and the business of living, but it can also be lucrative to circumvent the industry and do your own thing, and much more artistically satisfying. I think if you're going to go into a creative vocation, it has to be that. It has to be a vocation, right? You have to love what you're doing. But I wouldn't love what I was doing if I was being stifled all the time. I wouldn't love what I was doing if I had to pass my scripts before a sensitivity reader before it made it to the stage. I wouldn't be satisfied with that.